The winter of 1912 clung to the plains like a ghost that refused to be exorcised. Snow lay heavy over the broken grasses of the Blackfeet Reservation, muffling the sound of the wind, but not the memories that scraped at Good Stab's mind. He had once been a buffalo hunter, before the great herds were butchered into nothingness by white rifles and iron rails, before his people were penned into the cold corners of their own homeland. But now, Good Stab hunted something else, something older, something worse. They called him a vampire hunter, though the Blackfeet tongue had older words for such a thing, words that tasted of blood and winter smoke. To him, the monsters were not only creatures with pale fangs. They were the men who had come from across the ocean, wearing wool and steel, carrying the hunger of centuries. Some of them drank more than just whiskey in the dark. It had started with the night. The moon was thin, and the dogs refused to howl. He had found his cousin, runs to river, in the snow, eyes wide, throat torn out, the body drained dry. The old women whispered about the Natsini, the eaters of life. The elders spoke in low voices of treaties broken and spirits angered. Good Stab understood both kinds of killing. In the weeks that followed, stories came from the outskirts of the reservation. Trappers missing, railroad workers disappearing from their camps, and blood smeared on the frost-covered trees. Most thought it was wolves. Good Stab knew better. Wolves did not leave crucifix-shaped wounds burned into the flesh. Wolves did not walk into a man's tent in silence and leave without footprints. The trail was faint, but Good Stab followed it west into the deep valleys where the pines crowded close and the air was thick with the smell of old death. He carried his father's Winchester rifle, a belt knife carved from buffalo bone, and a pouch of black ash mixed with sage. These were not just weapons. They were stories, forged into things that could kill even the hungriest of the dead. Each step he took was guided not only by vengeance, but by history. He remembered the faces of the old buffalo, their breaths steaming in the dawn. He remembered the gunfire that cut them down, the laughter of men who took their hides and left the meat to rot. The vampires were cut from the same cloth, predators who devoured not just bodies, but the very soul of the people. On the third night of his hunt, he came to the ruins of an old trading post. The walls sagged inward, the roof torn open like the chest of a carcass. Snow drifted through the broken timbers. He could smell the copper-sweet stench of fresh blood beneath the frozen air. And there in the shadows of the ruined doorway, something waited, its eyes glinting red in the moonlight, its mouth curling into a smile that knew his name before he ever spoke it. Good Stab's grip tightened on the Winchester. The thing in the doorway tilted its head as if studying him, the way a crow watches something dying. "You wear your father's rifle," it said, in a voice like thawing ice. "He shot buffalo with it until the herds were gone. I remember watching him. His eyes were like yours, angry but small, mortal eyes." Good Stab didn't answer. Words were for the living. His breath came in slow clouds as he stepped forward, boots crunching in the snow. The vampire moved too, gliding across the floorboard without a sound, its shape barely human now that the moonlight touched it. Skin pale as bleach bone, lips split and blackened from cold. "I was here when your people still rode the plains," it continued. "I saw the soldiers come. I fed well that winter. Your chiefs made speeches to the wind, and the wind did not listen. But I did." Good Stab raised a rifle and fired. The sound tore through the night, echoing into the timbered hills. The bullet struck the vampire's chest, knocking it back into the shadows. But the sound that followed wasn't human pain. It was laughter, deep and low, as if the shot had only tickled something ancient. From the dark corner of the trading post, it came again, faster than Good Stab could blink. The rifle was wrenched from his hands, splintering as it hit the wall. Claws scraped his coat, slicing leather and grazing skin. He rolled into the snow outside, pulling the bone knife from his belt. The blade was etched with the old sigils, marks that his grandmother swore could cut even the skin of ghosts. The vampire stepped into the moonlight now, its teeth glistening. Blood dripped from its chin, steaming in the cold. "I remember your grandfather," it whispered. "He died hard, but not as hard as you will." Good Stab lunged, the bone knife flashing. The creature moved, but not fast enough. Its forearm split open under the blade. black blood spraying into the snow. The smell was wrong, bitter and burning in the throat. It hissed, recoiling, eyes narrowing with something more dangerous than hunger, recognition. "You have the ash," it said. "I can smell it on you. You've been told the old stories. But stories are not enough." The wind shifted, carrying with a chorus of other sounds. Footsteps in the snow, dozens of them, moving in from the tree-lean. Shapes emerged, thin and pale, with eyes that burned like dying coals. Not one vampire. Many. Good Stab's jaw clenched. His breath plumed in the cold, and the knife felt heavier in his hand. This wasn't just a hunt anymore. This was war. Snow swirled around the ruins, blurring the shapes moving toward him. Their footsteps were too soft, too measured, like predators that had no need to rush. Good Stab counted at least a dozen in the half-light, but he knew there could be more in the trees, watching. The leader, the one who had spoken, stood still, letting the others fan out like wolves around a wounded elk. Its red eyes never left him. "You think you hunt us," it said, "but you hunt your own past. Every family name on this land has been in our mouths. Every treaty broken was signed in our shadow." Good Stab slid his left hand into the pouch at his belt, pulling out a fistful of ash mixed with sage. The wind carried the scent across the snow, and some of the pale shapes hissed, halting their advance. One darted forward, a thin man in a torn railroad coat, skin pulled tight over his skull. Good Stab flung the ash into his face and drove the bone knife into his chest. The scream was short, cut off by the collapse of the body into the snow, where it melted into a smear of black water. Another came, faster. Good Stab pivoted, slashing upward, catching its jaw. Teeth clattered onto the ice like thrown stones. But the others did not break. They moved in closer, their hunger tightening the circle. "Your people think the soldiers brought death," the leader said. "They brought rifles and disease. We brought eternity." Good Stab's breath burned in his lungs. His boots slid on the ice as he backed toward the broken wall of the trading post. He knew he couldn't fight them all in the open. He needed the choke point of the doorway, the cover of shadow. Inside, the air was still thick with the copper tang of blood. Broken barrels lay scattered. They were dark and warped. He kicked one toward the doorway, splintering the lid. Inside, he saw salt, old trade goods left to rot. He grabbed a handful and scattered across the floor just as two of the creatures lunged in. The first crossed the line and shrieked, its skin blistering in the lamplight. The second tried to leap over and hit the edge of the doorway instead, crumpling like a rag doll. The leader stepped inside slowly, ignoring the salt. "I was there," it said, voice lowering, "the night the last buffalo herd fell. You remember the stories, don't you? How they left the carcasses to rot. That was me. I told them where to find the herds. I showed them how to drive them into the open. Every hide they took fed me." Good Stab felt the knife's grip cut into his palm. His vision narrowed to the creature's face, the way its smile stretched in a way no human jaw could manage. This wasn't just a monster. This was a shadow in every massacre, the hunger behind every famine. Outside, the footsteps were closing in again. Snow fell harder now, sealing the night in a coffin of white. And Good Stab knew, if he failed here, the ground would drink his blood as it had drunk the blood of the buffalo. The wind outside howled, slamming loose boards against the trading post walls. Shadows moved like ink across the snow, and the pale forms pressed closer, their breaths steaming and thin, hungry ribbons. Good Stab's heartbeat slowed, not out of calm, but because every beat might be his last, and he wanted each one to matter. The leader took another step forward. The flicker of the moon caught the black veins crawling up its throat, pulsing with something thicker than blood. "You carry your people's hate," it said. "But hate without power is nothing. Your chiefs had hate too. I watched them sign away land with trembling hands while we drank in the tents outside." Good Stab crouched slightly, the bone knife poised low. "You fed off us," he said, voice flat. The vampire's grin widened. "Still do." From the corner of the room, movement. Another of them crawling across the ceiling like a spider, its limbs twisting wrong under the rotted rafters. Good Stab didn't look up. He'd learned long ago not to give a predator the satisfaction of seeing your fear. Instead, he moved fast. A handful of ash went into the fire pit's embers. Smoke exploded upward, bitter and stinging. The thing on the ceiling dropped in pain, landing hard on the salted floorboards. It shrieked, skin blistering, and Goodstab drove the knife down into its neck until the head came loose, rolling into the dark. The circle outside surged. He heard the crunch of snow as more of them rushed in from the tree-lean. There were too many. If they all came at once, the ash and salt wouldn't hold them. Goodstab's eyes darted to the shelves at the back of the trading post. Old glass bottles, their labels faded, but he recognized the shape. Kerosene. His fingers found the cork and tore it free, the sharp, oily smell filling the room. He splashed it across the doorway, the walls, the bodies on the floor. The leader watched, head tilting. Fire won't save you. It will just make the end come sooner. Goodstab lit a strip of cloth in the embers and held it, the flames crawling toward his hand. It's not for me. A noise cut through the wind. Hooves. Faint at first, then louder, pounding through the snow. The vampires outside faltered, their heads snapping toward the sound. Goodstab's stomach tightened. There hadn't been horses on this land for months, not since the cavalry left. The leader's smile faltered for the first time. They shouldn't be here, it murmured. Through the curtain of falling snow, shapes emerged, huge, dark, and moving with impossible speed. Buffalo, but their eyes burned like coals, and frost clung to their hides like armor. Each breath they exhaled smoke like a forge. The vampire hissed something in a language older than the plains. The others backed away from the doorway. Goodstab did not move. The flame in his hand trembled, the heat biting into his skin, but he kept it steady. The dead buffalo were coming closer, and they were not coming for him. The ground trembled beneath the charge. Snow erupted in plumes as the spectral buffalo closed in, their massive bodies cutting through the storm like black ships through a white sea. Their eyes burned with a red deeper than the vampires, a furnace glow, filled with the rage of slaughtered herds. Goodstab could feel it in his bones. These were no allies. They were a reckoning, older than the hunt, older than the graves. The vampires hissed and broke formation, some retreating into the tree-lean, others darting wide to flank the herd. The leader did not move. Its gaze stayed locked on Goodstab, as though the charging dead were nothing more than wind. "You see," it said, voice low but cutting to the howl of the storm. "This land remembers, but it remembers all of us." The first buffalo smashed into the trading post wall, splintering with like kindling. A pale figure was caught on its horn and flung into the snow, screaming as its body was trampled into black sludge. Another vampire leapt onto a buffalo's back, claws sinking into its hide, only to be thrown off as the beast's body shimmered with sudden flame. Goodstab moved toward the doorway, the knife still in his right hand, the burning cloth in his left. The heat had blistered his palm, but he didn't let go. The leader stepped aside, allowing him to pass. "Run," it whispered, almost amused. "The herd doesn't care what you are." A buffalo slammed past the entrance, close enough for Goodstab to feel the frost radiating off its body. Its hooves struck the salted threshold and hissed, sending up a hiss of steam. For a heartbeat, the great animal turned its head toward him. He saw its eyes clearly, eyes that were not just rage, but recognition. It knew him, and then it charged into the snow again, scattering two vampires that lunged in its path. The night was chaos now. Flashes of fire, the scream of the wind, the dull thunder of hooves pounding through blood and ice. Goodstab's instinct screamed to move, to choose a side, but he could see in the madness that there were no sides left. The herd would trample everything. Somewhere in the blur, the leader's voice rose again, carried on the wind. "Kill me, hunter, and nothing changes. We are the same hunger in different skins." Goodstab tightened his grip on the knife, the burning cloth dripping fire into the snow. His breath came in ragged bursts, the smoke stinging his eyes. And through the storm, he began to push toward the voice. The snowstorm became a living thing. Its roar matched the thunder of hooves. Its bite cut through leather and skin. Goodstab shoved through the chaos, boots slipping on churned ice stained black with vampire blood. The air was heavy with the smell of ash, burned flesh, and something older, an iron tang that reminded him of the buffalo hunts when the plains were red for miles. A pale shape lunged from the side. He caught it with the bone knife, driving the blade up beneath its chin until the tip broke through the top of its skull. The body went limp instantly, dissolving into steam that curled away into the blizzard. The leader's voice came again, closer now, like it was circling him. "Your people prayed to the buffalo," it said, each word clear despite the storm. "When the herds fell, so did the prayers. Do you think they were forgotten?" A ghostly bellow tore through the night. A massive bull, its horns rimed with ice, barreled past him, the impact rattling the ground like a drum. Behind it, a vampire clung desperately to its back, clawing at the beast's spine, until the bull suddenly turned into pure smoke, letting the predator fall screaming into the snow before forming a few steps away. Goodstab kept moving, tracking the voice, his palm raw where the flame licked his skin. The leader appeared between two shattered walls, standing untouched by snow, the storm bending slightly around its body. "You think me the greater enemy," it said, "but I was only ever a servant. The herd made a pact long before you were born. The soldiers killed the bodies. I fed on the dying spirit. And in return, the ground trembled harder. The spectral herd shifted, their movements no longer chaotic. They were circling now, closing a ring around the trading post, around the vampires, around him. In return, the leader said, its smile curving unnaturally wide, the herd endures, not as flesh but as wrath. One of the buffaloes stepped into the gap between them. Its eyes burned brighter than the others, and Goodstab realized it was the same bull that had looked at him before. Its breath rose in long, slow plumes. It turned its head toward the leader, then toward Goodstab. The leader glanced at the beast. "They have chosen. You are part of this now." Hooves pounded closer, the circle tightening, the storm drawing like a noose. Goodstab felt the heat from the burning cloth sink deep into his blistered palm. He knew the next move he made could damn him, or bind him to something that would never die. And still, he stepped forward. The circle of ghost-hooved buffalo pressed tighter, their steaming breath forming a wall in the storm. Every snort, every thud of their hooves vibrated in Goodstab's chest. The snow underfoot had turned dark and wet, soaking through his boots until his toes burned from the cold. The bull did not break its stare. Its gaze felt heavy, like the weight of the plains themselves pressing down on him. Behind it, the other spectral beasts shifted restlessly, the sound of their steps echoing in a rhythm that was almost a chant. The leader moved closer, no longer smiling, its eyes narrowing in calculation. "They're offering you the same gift they gave me," it said. "Power, endurance, the chance to hunt until the sun is gone from the sky forever." Goodstab's grip tightened on the bone knife. "That gift rotted you." The vampire's head tilted slightly. "It remade me, and it will remake you. They see in you what they once saw in me, a hunter without a herd, without a future." A sudden bellow from the bulls split the night. The sound was low, but shook the air like a storm breaking. The herd stopped moving. Every spectral head turned toward Goodstab, eyes glowing like hot coals in the snow. Then they began to walk toward him. Not a rush, not a charge, a slow, deliberate advance. The leader stepped aside, gesturing toward the approaching beasts. "If they touch you, it will be done. Your blood will carry the memory of the herds, and your hunger will never end. Refuse and—" It didn't finish the sentence. It didn't have to. The first buffalo reached him, its massive head lowering until its muzzle was inches from his chest. The cold coming off, it was sharp enough to sting his skin through the coat. In its breath, he smelled not just frost, but grass, summer grass, sun-warm and endless, a memory of a world long dead. The bull's horn touched the bone handle of his knife, and for a moment, he felt the weapon tremble in his hand. Something was inside the horn and the bone, in the ash on his skin, something that recognized itself. The other buffalo closed in behind it, forming a wall of muscle and ghost light around him. The leader stayed back, watching like a priest at a sacred rite. Goodstab could hear his own breath, ragged in the stillness. His burned hand throbbed. The cloth's flame had shrunk to a small, fierce ember. The bull's eyes locked onto his again. This close, he could see the reflection of himself inside them. Only it was not him as he was now. The reflection was taller, darker-eyed, with teeth a shade too sharp and a shadow that stretched longer than a man should. The storm outside the circle howled louder, and the bull leaned in. The bull's muzzle touched Good Stab's chest, and the cold that poured into him was deeper than winter, deeper than death. It was a memory of an entire world being devoured. He saw the endless plains before the rifles, the herds moving like dark rivers under the sky. He felt the ground quake with their weight, smelled the grass bending under their hooves. And then he saw them fall, heard the crack of distant gunfire, the wet collapse of bodies too big to bury. He saw men, pale, laughing, skinning hides while leaving the meat to rot. And behind them, in the shade of a wagon, stood the leader, younger then, eyes already red, drinking from the open throat of a buffalo calf. The visions burned through him like fire made of ice. The herd's rage was a living thing, wrapping around his ribs, sinking into his blood. "Take it!" A voice boomed, not from the bull's mouth, but from the air itself, from the snow, from the bones under the earth. "Carry us. Hunt as we once did." Good Stab's knees buckled. The bone knife clattered into the snow. He could feel the pull of the offer, not as temptation, but as a weight that promised he'd never be powerless again, never lose another hunt, never watch another family member die screaming. Somewhere beyond the circle, the leader spoke, almost tenderly. "It is better to join the hunger than be eaten by it." Good Stab's burned hand still held the ember cloth. The fire was nearly gone, but its heat pulsed through him, a reminder of breath and heartbeat and mortality. He thought of his father's voice, of the way the old man had told him the rifle was never just for killing, but for protecting the living. He looked into the bull's burning eyes. "I am not your vessel," he said. The bull's breath turned to a snarl. The herd circle tightened, hooves tearing at the snow. The leader's smile vanished, replaced with something raw and animal. Good Stab moved fast. He shoved the ember cloth against the bull's muzzle. Flame erupted along its ghost fur, racing in lines of molten orange. The bull screamed, a sound like the wind tearing through mountains, and reared back. The circle of buffalo faltered. In that moment, Good Stab grabbed the bone knife and lunged at the leader. The blade struck deep into its chest, splitting pale flesh to the spine. The vampire convulsed, claws raking his shoulder, but Good Stab twisted the knife until black fire bled from a wound. The body collapsed, hissing as it dissolved into smoke. The herd roared in unison, their shapes flickering like candle flames in a gale. Without their pact holder, their form could not hold. One by one, they burst into ash and ice, the storm swallowing their cries until the night fell into silence. Good Stab staggered into the snow. His hands shook, the knife's handle slick with blood, some his, some not. The trading post was nothing but splintered walls and scattered salt. The wind was softer now, but the cold seemed sharper, more honest. In the distance, the first pale light of dawn touched the horizon. He knew the hunt wasn't over. They were more like the leader, feeding in shadows, hiding in history. And the herd's memory, it was in him now, whether he'd wanted it or not. He bent, scooped a handful of snow, and pressed it against his burned palm. Steam rose briefly before fading. Then he started walking, each step leaving a deep mark in the white. Behind him, in the far-off hills, came the faint echo of hooves. And this time, they weren't chasing him.